Our new anime begins with our protagonist, An. Standing at the edge of a cliff, tired of the world and overwhelmed by despair, he decides to end his life, believing he is the weakest in existence. As he takes the fateful leap, we rewind to the past to understand how he arrived at this moment. An was once part of a party with two individuals, Zoid, a magician, and Jolene, a swordsman. Together, they descended into a dungeon to hunt monsters and earn money. The trio successfully defeated a giant rat, but the task of salvaging its valuable parts fell to An. As an appraiser, a low common class job, An was tasked with identifying and extracting useful materials. Zoid mockingly referred to An as a trash picker, a term commonly used to demean appraisers. In this world, one's status and future are determined at birth. The goddess of light grants individuals their job, while the goddess of darkness bestows their skills. While skills can be trained and leveled up, the assigned job is permanent and passed down through generations. The society is divided into three classes: rare classes like merchants and strategists, high common classes with combat roles, and low common classes, which include appraisers and farming-related jobs. An, born into a low common class family, lost his parents early in life and was unable to continue the family business. With no other options, he became an adventurer despite his appraiser status. Unlike combatants, appraisers were often looked down upon since their skills could be replicated by magic tools and guilds. This made An a target of ridicule and mistreatment, particularly by Zoid, who hired An specifically to avoid getting his own hands dirty. After defeating the giant rat, An noticed its tooth was valuable, but struggled to pry its mouth open. He asked Zoid for help, but Zoid sneered, insisting An do it himself. With no choice, An complied, enduring the insults and humiliation. However, deeper in the dungeon, they stumbled upon a dead hellhound. Zoid, elated by the potential loot, ordered An to extract its parts. An, however, found the situation suspicious. Finding a dead B-rank monster without any signs of battle was unusual. He tried to warn Zoid and Jolene, but they dismissed his concerns, threatening to withhold his share of the earnings if he didn't comply. Reluctantly, An obeyed, but as they ventured further, they found an entire horde of dead hellhounds. Zoid and Jolene celebrated their apparent luck, while An's instincts screamed that something was wrong. His suspicions were confirmed when the real perpetrator of the carnage emerged, a monstrous creature far beyond their capabilities. Chaos ensued as Zoid and Jolene attempted to fight, but swiftly realized they were outmatched. In desperation, Zoid ordered Jolene to cast a paralyzing spell on An, using him as bait to escape. Jolene complied without hesitation, and the treacherous duo fled, leaving An to face the horde alone. The monsters descended upon An, tearing into him as he lay paralyzed. The excruciating pain eventually broke the spell, and An managed to throw his bag forward, using its contents as a distraction to flee. However, his escape route was destroyed by the very couple who betrayed him. Left with no way back and monsters closing in, An found himself at a dead end, a sheer cliff before him, and death behind him. Overwhelmed by regret for his weakness and the cruel life he'd endured, An chose to leap off the cliff, embracing death on his own terms. As he fell, memories and regrets surged through him. However, instead of meeting his end, An awoke in a mysterious place. A beautiful girl appeared, gently kissed his forehead, and disappeared. When he fully regained consciousness, he found himself beneath the world tree, a colossal tree of legend. The tree was thought to have withered long ago, yet here it stood, vibrant and alive. Its water droplets, known to cure all diseases, poured down on An, healing him completely. Scholars had long theorized that the world tree still existed, as it was believed to be the source of the mana in the atmosphere. Though countless expeditions had sought it, none had succeeded, until now. An, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanked the tree for saving his life. He briefly thought he heard a voice, but dismissed it as his imagination. Realizing he couldn't stay forever, An resolved to find a way out of this uncharted territory. However, just a few steps into his journey, a sudden slash severed An's ear, followed by another attack that cut his fingers. He was ambushed by an S-class monster, a creature of immense power. The monster toyed with An, torturing him for its own amusement. As he lay helpless, the creature prepared to deliver the final blow, but before it could, a death bear, a monstrous predator, appeared and crushed the S-class monster in a brutal attack. The death bear then turned its attention to An, mauling and blinding him in a savage assault. Just as it was about to kill him, An was miraculously saved by an unknown figure at the mysterious girl's request. Once again, An awoke beneath the world tree, his body fully healed. This time, he finally saw the girl, a stunning and enigmatic elf who had been watching over him. Ian woke up again, this time finding the mysterious girl from before standing by his bedside. Her mother urged him to drink the tea her daughter had prepared. Before Ian could say a word, the woman insisted, stuffing the tea into his hands. It tasted good, which made the girl Yuri smile bright, though her mother, Ursula, looked far less pleased. Yuri introduced herself and explained that she had begged her mother to save Ian. When Ian thanked her, Yuri humbly refused to take the credit, but Ursula clarified that it was indeed her daughter's pleading that had moved her to act. Ian learned that Ursula was the guardian of one of the 9 world trees scattered across the land. She had raised Yuri, who was born from the tree itself, which explained Yuri's ethereal beauty. However, Ursula remained on edge, clearly disapproving of Ian getting close to her daughter. Then, Ian remembered his missing eye, which had been slashed by the death bear. Ursula explained that she had replaced it with a fragment of the world tree, again at Yuri's request. Ian asked Yuri why she had gone to such lengths for him, and she revealed that he was the first person who had ever thanked her for saving them. In the past, she had rescued others, only for them to harm her by taking branches from her tree fork. When Ian thanked Yuri again, Ursula impatiently declared it was time for him to leave. However, Ian's weakened state made it clear that he wouldn't survive. Despite this, Ursula was unmoved until Yuri pleaded with her, tears streaming down her face. Reluctantly, Ursula agreed to train Ian, stating that she would not tolerate any slacking. Training began immediately. Ursula led Ian to a dark, pitch-black dungeon and instructed him to use his new spirit eye, which was imbued with the World Tree's power. As Ian focused, he began to sense the power within the eye and could see clearly in the darkness. For the first stage of training, Ursula summoned a gremlin, instructing Ian to dodge its attacks. She explained that combining his spirit eye with his appraisal skill would sharpen his observational abilities to an extraordinary degree. At first, Ian struggled, but with repeated efforts and the healing properties of the World Tree droplet Yuri had given him, he began to improve. After a week of relentless practice, Ian mastered basic defensive techniques. Next came offense. Lacking combat skills, Ian was initially unsure how to proceed, but Ursula handed him a wooden sword crafted from one of Yuri's branches. She warned him not to break it. Ian's first attempts to counter the gremlin's attacks failed. However, with Ursula's guidance, he learned to use his spirit eye to observe the gremlin's movements in slow motion. This allowed him to land a decisive blow, defeating the creature and earning his first victory against the monster. But there were many more gremlins in the dungeon. Over time, Ian developed his skills, eventually learning to use his appraisal ability to copy the gremlin's unique techniques. The process was grueling, causing him immense pain, but the World Tree droplet allowed him to push through. Finally, Ursula decided Ian was ready for advanced training. She allowed him to copy her own powerful skill, Scar Incantation, which allowed spells to be cast instantly with just a thought. While Ian initially struggled to handle the immense power of the ability, he gradually adapted, training his magic reserves until they could sustain the skill. After a month of relentless training, Ursula deemed Ian ready to face the Death Bear once more. Ian was nervous, but Ursula's confidence in him gave him the courage to step forward. The battle was intense. Ian's initial attacks missed, and his spells barely scratched the beast. However, he combined his spirit eye and newly learned techniques, using close-quarters wind magic and relentless fireballs to wear the creature down. Though the fight was reckless and chaotic, Ian finally landed the decisive blow, bringing the Death Bear down for good. As the battle ended, Ian stood victorious, battered but proud of his growth. His journey was just beginning, and greater challenges awaited. And with that, our episode ends. Stay tuned for the next chapter of this thrilling anime. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to receive updates. Until next time, take care and see you soon. Ursula Navan was ready to leave, but as a pretty dick, Ursula asked Yuri to give him the spirit core of the World Tree. She had already infused one in his eye, and this second one held Yuri's power. Although Ian hesitated to accept, Ursula explained that once he died, the core would return to the World Tree. Reluctantly, Ian agreed, and the core was infused into his eye. But then something unexpected happened. Yuri suddenly vanished and reappeared inside his eye. The spirit core had created a link between Ian and the tree, allowing Yuri to stay with him as a companion. Excited, Yuri offered her healing powers to assist Ian. Unsure how Ursula felt about the situation, Ian watched as Ursula explained she had done this for Yuri, giving her the chance to experience the outside world. As another gift, Ursula etched a new mark on Ian's hand, which worked as a storage spell. She also provided materials to forge a powerful sword, but in a surprising twist, she stabbed it into Ian's eye, binding it to him. Lastly, Ursula handed Ian a Philosopher's Stone, which created a permanent link with her. Now, she could see everything Ian experienced, and warned him not to try anything with Yuri. Ian asked Yuri what she wished to do once they reached the surface. Yuri expressed her desire to see her family, explaining how the World Tree, once a single entity, had been split into 9 branches and hidden in various dungeons. Determined to make her wish come true, Ian took his first step outside. Guided by Ursula, Ian encountered a viper. He defeated it, and Yuri instantly healed him, sparing him the usual headaches from battles. Soon, Ian came across an ominous door, sensing it would lead to something dangerous. His instincts were correct. It was the dungeon's boss room. Inside, the dungeon itself revealed its dark nature. It consumed humans to sustain the boss, powered by a spirit core at its center. The fight was intense, with Ursula guiding Ian through every move. The boss landed a heavy blow, but Yuri's constant healing kept Ian in the fight. Using acid venom from a previous battle, Ian dissolved one of the boss's arms, throwing it into a frenzy. At this point, Ursula granted Ian permission to use an ultimate spell toggle, substitute unleashing a massive fire blast that obliterated the bolt, leaving nothing but the battle won. Ursula exalted the speed, looking as its similarity to the Red Tree Core. She offered to use it to enhance Ian's powers, and he agreed. With the core's infusion, Ian's eye evolved into the Spirit God Eye, capable of further leveling up by absorbing Labyrinth cores. The dungeon sealed itself, ensuring no one could reach the World Tree again, allowing Yuri to live in peace. Finally, Ian and Yuri stepped into the outside world. Meanwhile, in a tavern, Zoid entertained the crowd with a dramatic tale of how he heroically sacrificed himself as bait to save Ian. However, Ian arrived just in time to expose Zoid's lies. Furious, Zoid claimed Ian couldn't have survived, but the crowd noticed Zoid's rage seemed out of place. Ian revealed how Zoid and Jolene had paralyzed him and left him for dead. The crowd turned against Zoid, but Ian stopped. He acknowledged that if Zoid hadn't abandoned him, he never would have met Yuri and Ursula. Thanking Zoid, Ian left the tavern. Ian soon ventured into another dungeon and acquired its core to level up his army. Though there was no sign of a world tree, Ursula accepted this, understanding that finding the world tree wouldn't be easy. Yuri remained hopeful. During their journey, they heard a woman's voice rushed out. Monsters were attacking a group of survivors. Ian and Yuri saved everyone still alive, but one of them, a young woman named Claudia, instantly fell for Ian. Embarrassed, Ian asked her companion Jasper to intervene, only to learn he wasn't her brother. Jasper introduced himself as the head of J Trading Company, and Claudia revealed herself as the third princess of the kingdom. Grateful for their rescue, Jasper invited Ian and Yuri to his manor. Claudia, still smitten, boldly declared her interest in Ian. To deter her, Yuri claimed to be Ian's wife, but Claudia wasn't discouraged, suggesting she could become his second. While Yuri was flustered, Ursula found Claudia amusing, thinking she'd made a new friend. At the manor, Jasper revealed his true intentions. He recognized the spirit core in Ian's eye and recounted the legend of the World Tree's power, which was used to seal away the demon. Jasper wanted the spirit core to protect it in his collection. Though Ursula considered the idea, Ian refused. Instead, they decided to remain friends. Before parting, Ian asked Jasper about other spirit cores. Jasper shared what he knew, but the location he revealed was highly dangerous. With their next destination set, Ian and Yuri prepared for the journey ahead. Ian hurried over, knowing that Yuri's sister could be here. Since Yuri is a world tree, that meant the other world trees were her siblings. However, he quickly hit a dead end. Ursula, unfazed, told him to touch the wall. It was actually a gateway into the dungeon. The dungeon had its own atmosphere, but Ursula immediately saw through it. It was just a high-level illusion, though an incredibly massive. Meanwhile, Yuri's sister Pina had already noticed their arrival. Yuri was eager to meet Pina immediately, but Pina, being her usual mischievous self, insisted they reach her by making their way to the end of the dungeon. She claimed she couldn't leave her place, so they had to come to her instead. The only issue? Pina had personally set up countless traps throughout the dungeon. It was a dangerous path, and she was particularly worried about Yuri's boyfriend. Yuri blushed at this, but Ian was more than ready for the challenge. Confident in her traps, Pina took a front row seat, fully expecting to enjoy the show. However, Ursula warned Ian about the dangers ahead, and he decided to speedrun Pina's trap game. To Pina's horror, Ian blazed an angry act to go with him. Pina, watching helplessly, pouted as all her hard work was destroyed in an instant. Yuri still believed her sister was just doing close. So no actual life-threatening danger. Just then, an S-rank monster appeared, attempting to knock them out with sleeping gas. Unfortunately for the beast, Ian had a resistance skill, rendering the gas useless. Then, he was suddenly attacked out of nowhere. An enemy using stealth, but Ian also had an ambush nullification skill. On top of that, he had Fortress mode active, making him practically invincible. Pina was still convinced her stealth monsters wouldn't be detected, but Ursula had already pinpointed their locations. Ian took them down effortlessly, even copying their skills and princess. They died instantly. Realizing there was no stopping Ian, Pina slumped in defeat. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the same dungeon, Zoid, the notorious backstabber, was fuming. Ian had survived and exposed his betrayal to everyone, ruining his reputation, making things worse. Zoid, his crime partner, played the victim. Claiming Zoid had forced her to paralyze them. As a result, all the blame fell squarely on Zoid. Desperate to redeem himself, Zoid took on an S-rank monster hunt mission, hoping a big victory would restore his stand. Unfortunately, he immediately fell into a spike trap and was thrown out of the dungeon. But Zoid refused to get him. He did cheat. Eventually he stitched crocodile-like monster was way out of his lane. Lena, his companion, told him to just give up. But even after the monster crushed his hand, Zoid refused to surrender. That's when Ian showed up. In a single swing, Ian effortlessly killed the monster. Zoid was in shock. Ian, however, simply healed Zoid, knocking him unconscious and asking Pina to eject him from the dungeon. Finally, Ian and his team reached the boss chamber. The only way to meet Pina was by defeating the found boss. However, defeating it would also seal off the world tree. Ursula reassured Ian that as long as the dungeon core remained intact, they wouldn't have any issues. Upon entering the chamber, Ian quickly realized something. The ground beneath them was the boss. They were standing on top of a massive turtle. Ian launched a fire spell at it, but it had no effect. The turtle counterattacked, but Ian fought back. Still, nothing seemed to be working. Then, Ian noticed some fireballs and water balls were hitting random spots in the room. Realizing the trick, he stood directly beneath the boss, waiting for it to attack. The moment it tried to crush him, he saw through the deception. Just an illusion. Dispersing the illusion, he finally saw the boss's real form. A tiny, adorable turtle. For once, Ian had defeated an enemy entirely on his own. However, upon using his appraisal skill, Ursula noticed something odd about the creature. But before she could say anything, Ian found himself unable to attack it. It just looked too cute and innocent. Instead of killing it, Ian turned to Pina and emotionally guilt-tripped her into surrender. Defeated, Pina finally opened the door to her home, reuniting with Yuri after hundreds of years. Pina, of course, couldn't help but tease Yuri about having a crush on Ian. Yuri, too easy to read, was flustered, but deep down she was overjoyed to see her sister again. Then Pina asked if she could tag along with Yuri. Happily agreed, and Ian had no objections. Suddenly, the baby turtle transformed into a woman, Kuro, Pina's guardian. The moment Ursula saw her, she became visibly nervous. The most polite Ain had ever seen her. Ain asked Kuro for permission to take Pina with. Surprisingly, Kuro had no objections, but in return, she wished to join them as well. She handed over her Philosopher's Stone, revealing that she possessed the barrier skill. Ain was more than happy to have her own being. As a final gift, Ain absorbed Pina's spirit core, leveling up his eye ability once again. Yuri was delighted, and even Ursula thanked him. With Pina now part of the team, they had 6 more sisters to find. But for now, their journey continued. Episode 4 ends here. Stay tuned for the next episode, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon.
Takumi is unexpectedly summoned to another world, finding himself standing before the goddess Nolan. However, the first thing she does is apologize sincerely, explaining that it was all a huge mistake. When the summoning spell is cast, it randomly selects individuals from Earth to become heroes in the new world. Takumi's life had been going well, and he was never meant to be summoned, but an error during the spell dragged him here along with the others. The mistake is blamed on the Holy Sidonia Empire, who recklessly activated the forbidden summoning spell. Because of this, Takumi was not sent to Sidonia like the other heroes, but instead to Nolan. Takumi asks Nolan if she can send him back to Earth, given that he was brought here by mistake. Unfortunately, Nolan explains that she cannot. Out of frustration over Sidonia's actions, Nolan had erased the summoning spell from the world's magic laws, making it impossible for anyone to move between worlds anymore. Worse yet, Takumi's original body had perished in the process, leaving him as a disembodied spirit. Panicking at the realization that he's a ghost, Takumi is reassured by Nolan that she has a plan. While she can't send him back, she can give him a new body and allow him to become a citizen of this world. As an apology, Nolan also offers him her blessing to make his new life easier. Takumi, with little choice, agrees to be reborn in this world, which pleases Nolan. She then instructs him to open his status screen to review his new life. Takumi is surprised to find that Nolan has given him a 17-year-old body, even though he's actually 40 years old. Nolan brushes off his concerns about the minor details and urges him to choose a job class. Takumi, not wanting to fight, opts for a production-based job rather than a combat class. Nolan then implants the job into his soul, along with several other beneficial blessings. She sends him on his way, forgetting to provide him with any tutorials. Takumi crashes into a forest upon his rebirth, and after picking himself up, checks his reflection in a nearby river. He's now a completely different person, with no memory of his old body. Inside the bag Nolan left for him, Takumi finds food rations and money, ensuring that he won't starve. His status screen reveals that Nolan has equipped him with many useful skills, including elemental magic. Curious, Takumi tests out his new powers by forming a water ball in his hand. He quickly learns that all the elements work in the same way, and he can control them with ease. Now that he understands his magic, Takumi decides to head to the nearest village. On his way, Takumi stumbles across a stick lying in the path. Using his appraisal skill, he identifies it as Trent wood, a material useful for crafting magic staves and spears. Deciding to try out his crafting abilities, he uses his skills to make a spear. He then spends the next hour gathering useful plants nearby, filling his item box with the plants when he realizes they won't fit in his bag. Suddenly, a young girl runs toward him, calling for help. She explains that a monster is chasing her, and Takumi soon sees a massive horned rabbit charging toward them. In a panic, Takumi attempts to defend himself, but in an accidental twist of fate, he ends up stabbing the rabbit in the head, killing it instantly. Surprised by his victory, Takumi realizes it was due to luck, not skill. As a result of the encounter, Takumi gains the job title of warrior, a class he didn't want. After ensuring the girl Molly is unharmed, Takumi learns she was out gathering herbs where she wandered too far from the village. Takumi, feeling it would be wasteful to leave it behind, stashes the rabbit in his item box. Realizing too late that he revealed his ability, he decides there's no turning back. As they approach the village, the other summoned heroes are arriving at Sidonia. Confused and disoriented, they are introduced to Empress Elizabeth, who tells them they have been summoned to save the world. However, one of the heroes, Akana, feels instinctively that Elizabeth cannot be trusted, as her gut tells her the Empress is deceptive. Meanwhile, Takumi and Molly arrive at the village where her parents, Banga and Martha, express gratitude for Takumi's help. Takumi asks if he can stay in the village for a while, as he has nowhere else to go. The couple welcomes him but explains that there is no inn in the village. However, they suggest building him a house, and soon all the villagers gather to start construction. Takumi uses his earth magic to flatten the ground, but using such a large-scale spell drains his mana. The villagers are amazed at his power, and the next morning his house is completed, thanks to his skills in carpentry, blacksmithing, and sewing. Takumi then decides to practice alchemy using ores he gathered to extract metal. He successfully turns iron ore into usable material, but finds that the process consumes a lot of mana, leading him to nearly pass out. He's saved by Martha and Banga, who give him a recovery potion. Despite their warnings, Takumi continues to experiment with his alchemy skills, eventually making useful tools and weapons. Later, Takumi asks Banga for some basic potions to use as templates for his own creations. After making his own potions with herbs he collected, he compares them to Banga's potions. Takumi's version appears more magical, but unsure of its effects, he tests it by building poison tolerance, consuming the potion until he nearly dies, then healing himself. One day, Takumi encounters a massive boar and a poison spider. The boar charges at him, and despite his attempts to defend himself with magic and a spear, nothing works. Just as he's about to be overrun, the spider intervenes, attacking the boar. Takumi, seeing the opportunity, uses alchemy to break down the boar's head, defeating it. The spider is injured, but Takumi heals it, and it ends up becoming his pet, which he names Maple. Returning to the village, Takumi shows off the giant boar and his new pet spider. The villagers are amazed, especially by the fact that he managed to tame such a dangerous creature. Takumi suggests they share the boar meat since it's too much for him to eat alone, and a feast is held in his honor. Banga brings him the valuable leftovers, which can be sold for money in the nearest city, Bolton. Takumi decides that his next destination will be Bolton. Meanwhile, Nolan is quietly pleased to see Takumi evolving, but her assistant questions her true intentions. After all, she gave Takumi a special body, her blessings, and, most importantly, sent him 1 year into the past, before the Sidonia Empire activated its spell. Yet Nolan simply notes that there wasn't any specific reason. The next morning, Takumi wakes up to find himself trapped in a web. He tells Maple, the spider girl, to apologize, but she says she's lonely because he's always busy with work. Feeling guilty, Takumi decides to take a break and spend some time playing with her. However, they're interrupted by Martha, who's stunned by the sight. He quickly reassures her that Maple wasn't trying to eat him, but Martha is more interested in the spider silk. We learn that spider silk is incredibly rare and is typically used to make clothes for nobles. Martha needs Maple to spin a more elastic version of the silk, and although Takumi doubts she'll cooperate, Maple surprises them by doing exactly what Martha asked. Takumi reminds Maple of their promise to play together, but she declines, saying she's now busy, so he heads off to complete his own tasks. It's been a month since he arrived in the village, and although he's grown close to everyone, he knows it's time to move to a bigger city to pursue alchemy. But he's unsure how to break the news to everyone who has been so kind to him. Boone presents Takumi with a new set of armor and even offers to fix his shoes, joking that they'll help him kick harder. Takumi laughs, reminding them he's just an alchemist. Bonga arrives as well, and Boone tells Takumi that it'll be lonely without him, but they all understand that he needs to move forward. Bonga mentions that a merchant named Paypek will soon be arriving, and that travel arrangements have already been made for Takumi to go with him. Deeply grateful, Takumi thanks them. Later, Takumi runs into Martha, who's carrying parts of a horned rabbit. Although the meat tastes great, she says it has to be discarded due to a lack of proper facilities. Takumi offers to purify it with his magic, surprising her with the revelation that he can use light magic. She urges him to keep it a secret. Those who can use light magic are rare, and even mid-level users can earn a fortune. Over the next few days, Takumi quietly helps develop the village using his powers, wanting to give back before he leaves. Eventually, Paypek arrives, surprised by the village's rapid development. Bonga introduces him to Takumi, and before they leave, he gives Bonga a healing potion, one of 100 he left at Takumi's home. Martha and the villagers gather to see him off. They present Takumi with a cloak made of maple silk. Touched, he promises to treasure it. Paypek notices Takumi's deep bond with the villagers. One of his guards, Heath, is moved to tears, while another, Real, teases him for acting like an old man. Paypek introduces them as the Lion Fang Adventuring Party, and Takumi realizes they're his escorts. The group asks Takumi about his luggage, and he mentions he has a pet spider. When they peek inside, Maple surprisingly warms up to their third member, Bogar, making the rest jealous. Amid the laughter, Paypek asks if Takumi has more potions for sale, but before he can respond, the carriage suddenly halts. They're ambushed by goblins. The Lion Fang members spring into action, excited to deal with the monsters. Takumi is terrified. This is his first real encounter with goblins. Paypek reassures him that it's a common danger for merchants. The party defeats the goblins, though Real notes it took longer than expected. 3 days later, they finally arrive in Bolton, a city in the Barkula Kingdom. Takumi is overwhelmed by how different it is from the village. He heads to the Adventurers Valkyries Guild with the Lion Fang to report the completed escort mission. Takumi tells the receptionist he wants to join the Alchemists Guild, but she whispers that there's no official branch in the city. Most people just register with the Adventurers Guild and use the guild card as a general ID. It only remains valid if the holder completes at least one quest a month. Takumi registers both himself and Maple. The receptionist is shocked to see such a dangerous pet, but processes it anyway. Later, Takumi visits Paypek's headquarters to sell his potions. Paypek offers to buy everything for around 7 million yen. Takumi is thrilled, though Paypek admits he's underpaying a bit since Takumi is still unknown in the market. Suspicious but trusting his gut, Takumi decides to accept the deal. Paypek then recommends a rental house with a built-in workshop, perfect for an alchemist. Takumi is surprised when they reach the place. It's a mansion. He jokes that it must be haunted, but Thomas, Papek's assistant, assures him it's not. While exploring the city, Takumi smells a horrible stench. Thomas explains that nobles use ancient magical purifiers from dungeons to manage sewage, but commoners can't afford them. Occasionally, priests are hired to clean it, but mostly people just endure the smell. The next day, Takumi moves into his mansion and gets to work building a toilet. Using materials from Papek's company and his magic, he successfully purifies the waste system, leveling up both his alchemy and light magic in the process. Exhausted, he drinks a potion to recover. Just then, he hears a scream. Papek has been caught in Maple's web, but to everyone's surprise, Papek finds it cozy rather than threatening. Takumi still apologizes, and Papek shrugs it off. He's far more interested in the toilet, amazed by its cleanliness and functionality. He asks Takumi if he can use light magic. Remembering Martha's warning, Takumi begs him to keep it a secret. Papek agrees, under one condition. Takumi must make 100 more toilets. Overwhelmed, Takumi thinks of hiring help. Papek suggests getting a slave, as slave contracts are sealed by magic, ensuring secrecy. They also provide reliable household help and protection. Papek also explains that Takumi's affinity for light magic means he's chosen by the Church of Divine Light, the dominant religious power in the Holy Empire of Sidonia. But Takumi knows the church exploits light magic users, so they must keep his identity secret. Takumi is reluctant to use slaves, but he acknowledges the workload.